Hey everyone, welcome back to our scenes. Today we're going to have a look at all the important laws in your science textbook, important with respect to your SLC exam. So I have got a set of 15 laws. So let's get started one by one. Before moving forward, let me remind you to carry on watching my video till the end, since I'll be highlighting you about certain laws which are not present in your textbook, but they are asked in your exam questions most of the time, not as a law, but as an answer. So let's have a look at all of those. Let's get started. So the first one over here, Ohm's law. Okay, so we have got few physics laws where we have got mathematical equation. So always try to remember. Most of the time what the students do is they'll remember the law, they'll leave this thing aside, the mathematical part, which is very 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 important because this also carries mark. So in this case, I'll help you to remember how to, I'll just tell you how to remember this. Remembering this is damn easy. You normally bug it up. So to remember Ohm's law, you can remember that Ohm is nothing but Veer. Ohm and Veer are equal. So Ohm is Veer, V-I-R. So this you need to remember, V is equal to. Okay, so law is easily available to you in your textbook. The same law I have copied down over here. So according to the law, potential difference is directly proportional to the current flowing through it. So V is directly proportional to I. If I remove this, is equal to sign, I will be coming down and I have to deal with a constant. That is nothing but R over here. So next, Joule's law of heating from the same chapter, electricity. So here you have got, this is a very damn easy law. All you need to do is you need to remember this. If you remember the mathematical equation, you can easily write this part. So Joule's law of heating is nothing but H is equal to I square RT. So how do you remember? If you remember this, I told you that you can easily write down this. Now just see over here. H is nothing but heat, right? The heat produced in the resistor is. I've got 3 points over here, right? First one, see here, I have got I square now, directly proportional to the square of the current, that is this. Second one, directly proportional to the resistance, that is R. Directly proportional to the time for which the current flows through the resistor, that is time, that is T. So the first one is highlighting I square, second one is highlighting R, and the third one is highlighting your time, that is T. So all you need to remember over here is this mathematical equation. Okay, the next is right hand thumb rule from your next chapter, that is magnetic effects of electric current. Normally I need to just point out over here, normally what the students do is right hand thumb rule, they misinterpret it with Fleming's right hand rule. Fleming's right hand rule is different, whereas right hand thumb rule is a different concept. So please have a correct look at that. Right hand rule here, right hand thumb, that is your right hand's thumb is involved, only the thumb, no other fingers. Whereas in Fleming's case, you are involving these 3 fingers, right? So in right hand thumb rule, only the thumb comes, nothing else, and you don't have a scientist name over here. So this is an easy way to remember right hand thumb rule. So if you're carrying a a conductor carrying current, if you're holding it in your right hand such way that your right hand's thumb is pointing the direction of the current, then this fingers, they are going to point out the direction of magnetic field or magnetic lines of force. Okay, so that is just remember this, you give thumbs up, just that is right hand thumb rule, nothing else. So you need to remember thumbs up. Now from the same chapter you have got 2 more laws, that is Fleming's left hand rule and right hand rule. Okay, so one easy way to remember left hand rule and right hand rule, in both these cases what you are doing is you are just holding your thumb, forefinger as well as your middle finger in this way. See, they are 90-degree and this one is 90-degree. So in such way you are holding it, and then everything is same, thumb, forefinger, middle finger, so mutually perpendicular to one another. Forefinger will point out the direction of magnetic field, middle finger will point the direction of current, whereas your thumb will point the direction of motion. This is going to be the same for left hand rule as well as right hand rule. Now the only difference is, in case of right hand rule, it's your right hand. In case of left hand rule, it's your left hand. The other thing which you need to remember is, left hand rule is also known as motor rule, whereas right hand rule is also known as dynamo rule. Remembering the other name is very, very, very important, because sometimes, I won't say every time, but most of the time what they do is they prefer using these other names while asking you questions. And if you're not aware of the second name or the other name given to a particular law or any other thing, then you won't be able to answer it even though you know the answer. That is the reason why left one is motor, right one is dynamo. Dynamo is nothing but a smaller version of a generator. Since we have a generator, right, generator, working principle, everything, so a smaller version of a generator is nothing but dynamo. Next one, law of conservation. The sixth one, law of conservation of energy, very damn easy law which you have been studying since your primary. Energy can neither be created nor destroyed, but can be transferred from one form to another. That's it. So you are well aware of it, even a primary student is. Next one is law of refraction. Law of refraction of light. We have got two laws over here. Okay. So two laws together, that's the reason why laws of refraction of light. Now here you need to be well aware of both the laws, because when they're asking you the laws of refraction of light, they expect you to write both the laws, and both the laws will carry marks. So 2 marks together will be given to this case. Okay, so first law is damn easy, what you have been studying in your reflection also. You have got three rays over here: incident, refracted, and the normal. So incident ray, refracted ray, as well as a normal, they all lie in the same plane. Easier version. Second law, the ratio of sine. This is very important. Here you need to remember the mathematical equation. This is the mathematical equation for the second law. Sine I by sine R is nothing but, it's equal to constant. Ratio of sine of angle of incident. This I stands for angle of incidence to the sine of angle of refraction. So this R is refraction, angle of refraction. So when you divide it, you're going to get a constant. Now the rule over here is, if the angle, that is angle of incidence, is more than 0 and less than 90, when it's fluctuating somewhere between 0 to 90 for incident, angle of incidence, then this law will hold true. Remembering this is also important for your objective specifically. If you are preferring not to write this while writing the law, it's fine. If you write, well and good. If no, it will work out anyhow. But leaving this will be wrong. You need to write this along with this. And the next law, what we call it as the Snell's law. This eighth law is nothing but the second law of refraction of light. This law, ratio of sine of angle of incidence to sine of angle of refraction, is constant. This law itself is the Snell's law. So this question has appeared last year. They have asked you to mention the Snell's law for 1 mark. Okay, so this is the same one. If you are studying this, it's like you are studying two laws together. That is the Snell's law. Next, okay, so here your physics part comes to an end. Next comes your chemistry part. In chemistry, I've got only 3 laws to study. That is from your periodic classification part. And I must tell you, these 3 laws are damn important. From that chapter, you have got laws. Then you have got, the trends, practical questions based on trends, which I'll be highlighting in my next video. So, Doberanus law of triads. See, these laws are not exactly present in your textbook, not in a proper word form or something. They have explained it well, but you don't have any bold letter part to remember. That's the reason why I have written it separately over here. You can take a screenshot of this and go for study. So Doberanus law of triads. So you have got 3 elements which are having similarity when they are arranged in the increasing order. The average of the first 2 will give you the atomic mass of the middle one. The Newland's law of octaves, again this is also the same thing. You have got the explanation there, but no proper word to word law given. So I won't dealing much, in detail with it, because all this are just by heart. I am sure you have by heart it well as well. Next is Mendeleev's periodic law and modern periodic law. Yeah, here is the culprit. What should I say? Where you get mixed up. So Mendeleev's periodic law and modern periodic law, they sound almost the same. Modern periodic law is also known as Moseley's periodic law, whereas Mendeleev's periodic law does not have another name. So, and their laws are also much more similar. See, properties of elements are periodic function of. Properties of element are periodic functions of. In Mendeleev's case, they are of atomic masses. In modern case, they are of atomic number. This is the main important difference. And if you are mixing this up, your answer is completely wrong. You can't even expect, a half mark or a 1/4 mark as well. So Mendeleev's periodic law, nothing but they are the functions of atomic masses, whereas modern is the function of atomic number. Okay, so next comes your biology part. Now from the biology part, as I said, you don't have any law mentioned specifically in your textbook. But here I have given you a few laws. So what are these laws now? Normally they are, see, you have got monohybrid cross, dihybrid cross. I've already explained you how to, if they give you any questions, how you're supposed to write it, how you're supposed to draw the checkerboard, that is. If you have not checked it, you can just go and check it on my page. I have already uploaded it before. So in this case, what they do is, along with the checkerboard, they ask you certain questions. Like, they might ask you that why we have got a new combination like in dihybrid cross, or why does, in dominant, like for your monohybrid cross, why is it that you get most of the plants is tall and, very rarely, hardly among four, only one will be the shorter one. So law of dominance and all will come over there. So to highlight it, I have just written over here. Law of dominance is normally referred to the monohybrid cross. So it will be only asked with the monohybrid cross. So you can remember here, I have given you the law over here. You can take a screenshot and study. So when an organism is heterozygous for a trait, heterozygous means, like for example, you had in your checkerboard monohybrid cross, this is heterozygous. That means you have got a capital as well as a small letter. This is heterozygous. When you have got both capital letters or both small letters, they are known as homozygous. That means you have got similar kind of alleles together. So in this case, they are not similar, so they are different, heterozygous. In this case, what happens? Only the dominant allele will produce a phenotype. That means only the dominant allele will be able to express itself. So in this case, the dominant one is a capital one, capital T, which stands for tallness. So that is the reason why among four offsprings, you are going to get 3 tall and 1 dwarf. So whenever they ask you a monohybrid cross, and related to that, when they ask you a certain question, for the below average students, I'll be telling you this directly. Go and write this at least, it will be helpful. Most of the time your answer will be somewhere related to this particular part. Okay, next comes law of segregation. Okay, so this is mainly related to dihybrid cross. There are two laws which are, in relation to dihybrid cross. Now, when they ask you questions related to dihybrid cross, most of the time they'll be asking you why you get a new combination. Like suppose if you have taken round and yellow seed and wrinkled and green, you're going to get round and green and wrinkled and yellow. So new combinations will be seen. When they ask you a question related to that, then you can go for this as well as independent law, and you can combine both and write. Okay, so what does actually a segregation mean? Segregation means separating. During gamete formation, what happens is, here they randomly separate from one another. That is, if I have to say that, you have got capital T small t or small t capital T. During gamete formation, what happens? If suppose this is the parent, this and this will separate. They are independent. They are not going to mix up together. So during gamete formation, they're going to separate, and they're going to pass to the offsprings individually. So it's not like somebody is going, it's governed by something. Nothing is influencing it. Okay, so the last one over here, law of independent assortment, the 16 one I have repeated it, so let's cut it off. Okay, so last one, law of independent assortment. This is also in relation to dihybrid cross. So according to law of independent assortment, the allele which a gamete receives, or what should I say, a particular offspring, the gamete whichever it receives from whichever parent it is not influenced by the other allele. Like in case, uh, yeah, as I said, round yellow and wrinkled green. This combination of parents, if we have taken. In the offspring, we are going to get round yellow, of course. We are going to get wrinkled green as well. Other than this, we are going to get round green as well as wrinkled yellow. So these two are the parents. These two are the new combinations. So this new combination is because of law of independent assortment. That means round is not connected with yellow, neither is wrinkled connected with green. So that is the reason why wrinkled can come together with yellow, whereas round can come together with green. So they are not connected to one another, they are independent. Okay, so that is what is explained in case of independent assortment. So if they ask you question in dihybrid cross as to why you are getting a new combination, you can go for writing, law of independent assortment. Now, if they ask you questions regarding, what should I say? How the alleles, how do they pair, or anything related to dominance, something, you can just join this up along with the dominance, or you can also join it with independent assortment on the safer side. These laws are not at all present in your textbook. Okay, so that's the reason why I have given you separately over here. Hope this video proves helpful to you. So do like and share my videos. Along with this, I would also like to remind you to subscribe to my channel and share it with your fellow friends so that they can also find, they can also make use of it. So in my next video, I'll be highlighting on your periodic classification. That is how to work on the trends practically, how to answer the questions related to the trends. So till then, stay safe.